Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 29 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow us on Twitter at The Odds Breakers. Check us out on social media / The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code The Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the website and the podcast, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If you'd like to make any one-time donations, please use patreon.com. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Well, I hope everyone had a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. I myself was up in the mountains in Arizona, and it was quite beautiful up there. Weather was great. It was in the mid-70s. No rain. Lots of wildlife. Certainly had enough beers. Got to do a little fishing. And most of all, did plenty of relaxing. So that was great. One thing that's been keeping me afloat here is Marco from Wager Talk. I've been getting the horse plays from him, and they've been pretty money. He gave out a pick 4 last week at Churchill Downs that ended up cashing pretty big. It was about a $50 investment, cashed about $235. Marco's kind of been on fire here for the horse racing, so having a blast just watching that and doing a few of my plays, but taking some of his plays, of course, and he's the master at it. And I'm looking forward to this weekend. Some more graded stakes race at Churchill Downs, and the next week we have the Santa Anita Derby coming up, and I'm probably going to have somebody on for that. If not Marco, we shall see who is available. Also, next week, UFC 250 is coming up, and Nunez is fighting. Very excited about that. Cub fan Danny will be back to discuss some more of his great plays. He's been doing well in the UFC, so real excited for next week's podcast. But we also have a great show for you today because we're still talking about the NFL and NFL season win totals. It's the AFC East, and the Super Bowl champion AFC West. Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to make it there again? I guess we shall see. Little bit of news. It looks like the NHL has a playoff format. That's pretty good stuff. 24-team playoff rather than 6-team. If the season resumes, they're just going straight to the playoffs. Now, it's not approved yet, but at least they have a format. That's awesome. I would like to see the NBA do that if they come back. The hell with the regular season. All right? Go right into the playoffs. That's cool. That's really cool because it adds a little bit of parity. Some of these teams are going to be a little bit rusty, and maybe you're going to see some upsets, which would be awesome. There'd be certainly excuses, but there would be excuses either way, no matter what you did. Baseball doesn't seem to get their shit together yet. A lot of players want a lot more money than a half season would give them. It's the owners don't want to give up more than 50% of the revenue because they have expenses and things like that too. I find it silly, millionaires negotiating over this stuff and halting the season, possibly going to get nothing if this takes any longer. Just accept what you can when you're making way more money than the average person anyway, in my opinion. There's people that would play for free, or at least just to make a modest living. So I find it silly that it takes so long for these things to come together. I'm really hoping baseball comes back around the 4th of July or earlier. I mean, can't imagine that weekend without some baseball. We're all sick of sitting on our ass as well, betting on Korean baseball. So hopefully the MLB will get it together.
And I said to myself, this is the business we've chosen.
So when we do start opening up sports to fans, I actually have a few thoughts on how to accomplish that safely. And I think it all should start with Major League Baseball, right? Or if the NHL comes first, let it start with the NHL. I'd say for the first week or two, you have no fans. See how it goes, right? Maybe the first 2 weeks, you just have coaches, and maybe a couple of them can sit in the seats, all spread out from each other. The first week, maybe they come into the dugout area the second week, all right? And then maybe you bring 25% of the fans in, and they are all 4 seats apart, okay? 4 seats apart. And then maybe, if that works and you don't see any spikes in the virus in cities where they're having sporting events, you get a little bit closer. You can have your masks if you want, if you think that's going to help when people cough, because obviously masks don't really help stop the virus itself. And you move them 3 seats across, 3 seats from each other. Then eventually you get to 2, and you're at 50% capacity. And then hopefully in that city, the viruses went down enough where you could be at 100% capacity. In my opinion, a lot of people that are under 40 are not really quarantining anyway. Daycares have been open this whole time with kids running around trading spit, coughing and breathing in each other's face this whole time. Now, pretty much every kid is back at daycare. Well, I suppose that's geographic too, but for the most part around the United States, many kids have been going to daycare, and most kids are now back to daycare. So what's the difference between going to a stadium? Restaurants are open, and they talk about capacity like that's going to matter. Walking around in a restaurant is probably just as susceptible to being in a giant stadium, sitting somewhat close to someone, but not walking around that much.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
If you look at all the pictures online over Memorial Weekend, lots of people were partying. The Ozarks was going nuts. In Missouri, there was one bar where there was looked like 300 people were in a small swimming pool. It looked like it. I don't count. Floyd Mayweather was at a bar in Arizona, a club where everyone was packed together. Nobody was wearing masks. Okay? But a lot of that stuff's been going on even during the early times of the quarantine. Right? So you can't tell me you can't start thinking about having people come to games. The good thing, at least, about this virus is that young people are almost impervious to it. Some young people will get the flu a little bit from it. Some will get absolutely nothing. So that's where you have to start realizing it's okay for them to get immunity. It's okay. Because at least when the older people come out, it's less chance of them catching it from those young people if some of them already had it. I mean, do you want to stay quarantined until 2 years from now and when there's a vaccine? You want to stay at home that long and do nothing and not live your life? You know? It's starting to get a little bit ridiculous, but I've always been someone that said, I was in the middle, that yes, we should have quarantined for a while and that we should have started easing off by age. Said that from the beginning. But in my opinion, it's silly to not think that you can have sports when you look at all those people that really weren't quarantining anyway and how we're actually opening up the United States of America. Before we get into NFL season win totals, just want to talk a little bit about NFL quarterbacks and how much money they make. Yeah, these quarterbacks, I mean, they're paid so massive compared to most of the other positions. I always found it strange, kind of growing up as a football fan, or pretty much any of these major sports, why some players compare that much more money, and it's gotten worse over the years, than the average player. I mean, that much more. You got guys like Aaron Rodgers, $28 million. You know, you guys like Eli Manning in the $20 million until he retired. You got guys like Phillip Rivers, millions, multi-millions. The average NFL player makes $2.7 million on average, and that's including the quarterbacks moving that number up. And the beginning rookie salary for somebody that wasn't in the first round, right? Maybe first or second, is $610,000. I mean, if you only play 3-4 years in the NFL these days, that's not enough to retire on. You have to go do something else. You know, you do. While a quarterback can play one major contract, he's done 20 times over. All right. Now, quarterbacks are a lot like lead singers in bands, you know, a lot like lead singers. So they come in, they're not necessarily better or worse than anybody else. They're not superstars. You know, they haven't done anything. And they can get brought up around a great team and then go get paid. You know, you saw that with Joe Flacco. Huge contract with the Ravens, but it really wasn't him that was good. It was the other players that made him look good. The other players deserve some of that money. You know, imagine how good the Packers might have been if Aaron Rodgers wasn't making close to $30 million a year the last 5-6 years. You know? How good could they have been if they actually just maybe paid Rodgers like $10 million a year, which is still 4 or 5 times the amount of the average person, or $15 million at the tops? They could have got some serious help for Aaron Rodgers. Their defense could have been better. They could have had better pass catchers, better wide receivers, more of a player in the free agent market. But you have this one guy that commands a whole third of your salary cap. You know? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, if I played for a quarterback that was making 28, 30, 25, whatever, $1 million a year while I'm getting, you know, I'm an average player. I'm not an all-star, but I'm making $1 million. Do you think that I might have a little bit of animosity towards that, especially if I'm producing pretty well, you know? Then all of a sudden this quarterback donates to charity. Say it's $1 million, gets a ton of credit from the media. That $1 million that I could have had to make me just a little bit more money. You know, how do players look at quarterbacks like that? And then you got a guy like Dak Prescott, who reportedly turned down $35 million a year, 5-year, $175 million. I know the Cowboys denied it, but you know already he's turned down over $30 million a year, right? Let's say he lands that big contract that he wants. He's looking for 4 years, more like $40 million, just to let you know. You know, he doesn't want it 5 years. He thinks possibly his market's going to go up, but still, it's almost the same amount of money. 4 years, $40 million. What's that? $160 million. How are the other players going to look at that? You know? I mean, you do that, next year, you are losing everybody. Anybody that makes a name for themselves, they're leaving that team to get paid something more than the Cowboys can offer them due to the salary cap. You know? It's absolutely ridiculous. And like lead singers and bands, they come up with a band. They might be the least talented one even, but the band writes some pretty damn good music. Pretty damn good. And that lead singer becomes a god. That lead singer leaves the band. The other band can't have a solo career because their people are used to that person's voice. That person gets paid for the rest of his life. That band is stuck waiting for that lead singer to hopefully come back and tour with them. I mean, that happens to most bands. Now, there's some exceptions. I mean, Slash from Guns N' Roses could play some damn good guitar. He's very outgoing, and he's made some money with a solo career. But in the most part, these bands need their lead singers. You know? But a band would never work if a lead singer said, I want to take $30 million a year, and you guys can make $2.7 million a year. I mean, do you think that band would work? Do you think they want to play with that singer? Hell no. And then all the money they could have made in the future, the lead singer has a solo career, but the people that have the nostalgia want the whole band together. They're not going to go to the concert necessarily. They're not going to pay what they could have for a ticket just because one diva wants a lot more money than the rest of the team, and he wants more than he deserves. I think that's weird that the NFL's set like that. I think the NFL should make some better rules where, yes, the top players can get a percentage more, but to be this ridiculous when it's a team sport, it's just bad for team camaraderie. And it's bad for the team sticking with each other. It's bad for the players sticking with each other. It separates everything. That's the ugliest that I do not like about the sport. So, if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to tweet me at the Odds Breakers. But coming to Dak Prescott, going back to him, I don't think he's worth $30 million a year. I mean, you saw how bad he was in the first half. He couldn't win enough games with his comebacks to even get in the playoffs.
Unreal.
I'd roll my dice with Andy Dalton at $15 million a year. I bet you he'd be happy to sign $10 to $15 million for 3 to 4 years. You know? Maybe Cam Newton. Maybe he's going to be healthy now. Maybe you bring him in. He's going to work for less. That's for damn sure. You know, the Cowboys, they had a great offensive line. That helped Dak out a ton. A ton. Great receivers. You see what happened when Amari Cooper came, and Dak's getting all the credit. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. As a Cowboy fan, if I was a Cowboy fan, I'd be awfully pissed off. Let's move in to NFL season win totals, starting with the AFC East. Now, as we know, the AFC East has been dominated by the Patriots for years. Years. All right. I mean, I can't remember the last time someone else won it. But without Hall of Famer Tom Brady, future Hall of Famer, whatever. Lots of people say greatest of all time. I can't disagree. This might be the year that somebody else comes out. It's starting to even up. The Dolphins drafted a ton of players. The Bills made the playoffs last year. And the Jets had a great draft. You know, the conference plays the AFC West and the NFC West, which, in my opinion, is pretty hard. As a matter of fact, they probably have it the hardest. Lots of travel is involved here, and these teams are going to have to make some adjustments. We're going to start out with the New England Patriots that had 12 wins last year. Their Vegas win total is down to 9, juiced to the under, minus 130. You're looking at more like 8.8 here. Schedule is hard with at-large games against Houston and Baltimore. That's what you get for finishing first last year. Key losses: Tom Brady, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, linebacker, defensive tackle Danny Shelton, center Ted Karras, wide receiver Philip Dorsett, and fullback James Devlin McGregor. Unfortunately, this is probably the last time I'm going to get to see or say Devlin McGregor. Key additions: defensive line Bo Allen, free safety Adrian Phillips, wide receiver Marquise Lee, quarterback Brian Hoyer, the Destroyer. I called him the Team Destroyer when he was at the Bears. And whom they drafted: safety Kyle Duggar, edge rusher Josh Yunk. No, it could be Unke. I don't know how to pronounce that. Edge Anthony Jennings, and a whole lot of Patriot type nobodies that could become somebodies. Now, unless you've been living in a rock, Tom Brady is playing for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I remember when Brady tore his ACL and was out for the season. Belichick somehow lined this team up with about 9 wins, made the playoffs with Matt Castle. We saw with Jimmy G them winning, I think, 3 out of 4 games, which was good. I mean, the problem is the division still sucked back then, and the division is definitely a lot better. Okay. I also don't like what I saw towards the end of the season with the Patriots. I mean, they were really declining, and then they lose at home to Miami with Tom Brady, when that win could have gave them a bye week. And we all know what happened when they played the Tennessee Titans, don't we? So the Patriots, they have a hard schedule. Like I said before, very hard schedule. I imagine they're going to stay. I'm just looking at it now. They're going to stay on the West Coast after they play the Chargers towards the end, and then go to the Rams on Thursday night. But I mean, I just don't like how everything's sitting up here, and I really think that this could be a year that the Patriots should be thinking about rebuilding. They don't have a real quarterback. They have Stidham, and they have Hoyer, the Team Destroyer. Okay? So, in my opinion, looking at 9 wins, even with Belichick there, in this division, with the hardest schedule from the division, I cannot even see how they come close to that. I think there's a better chance that this team gets 0 to 6 wins rather than over 9 wins. All right? This is an underplay for me. Taking the under on the Patriots, I'm going to pay to see Belichick do it now with all that talent gone without Tom Brady.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
They also don't have the hope of Tom Brady coming back like they did back when Jimmy G was playing. Just remember that. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. Vegas win total 9, juiced to the over, minus 140. So you're looking at about 9.3. At-large games versus Tennessee and Pittsburgh. Key losses: defensive end Jordan Phillips, defensive end Shaq Lawson, cornerback Kevin Johnson, key additions, defensive end Mario Addison, outside linebacker A.J. Klein, defensive tackle Vernon Butler, defensive tackle Quinton Jefferson, and cornerback Josh Norman. Who they drafted? Edge rusher A.J. Espinosa, whatever. Zach Moss, the running back from Utah, and quarterback Jake Fromm. Summary. I don't love who the Bills lost. Don't love them losing Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips, especially. These guys were the leaders in sacks on this whole team. I don't like losing them both. I could deal with one, but both. But I do like the potential of Espinosa and Mario Addison. The pickup of Mario Addison kind of replaces some of that. So I think he had 9 sacks last year, actually, so that's pretty good. But I expect to see some regression there in the beginning. But the rest of the team looks very solid to me. Very solid. They had a nice Pythagorean win total of 9.8 last year. I got to give them a half win due to them benching their players last year against the Jets, the last game of the season, because they didn't need to win that game. We have to remember to do that. All right? So what can I say? Josh Allen here has a huge opportunity to take control of this division. Huge opportunity. All right. So with the Buffalo Bills, I'm starting at 10.5 with the Pythag at 9.8. That's 10.2. I'll take away a half game for the fact that they were very healthy last year. Their schedule last year was easy, so I'm going to take away a game for that. Schedule this year is medium, 0. Key losses minus a game and a half, but who they picked up and everything. I like it coming right back with a game and a half. I have their wins at 8.75. The win total is at 9.3. So this is not a play for me, but I do know that they're going to win the division. I mean, I do think that they're going to win the division. I gave this out at plus 175 in April, early April. It was either late March or early April. And it's all the way down to like plus 120, plus 110, something like that. I still think there's value there. So take the future bet of the Buffalo Bills to win the AFC East. Next team, we're going to go into the New York Jets. Vegas win total is 7, juice to the under at minus 130. Schedule is hard at large games versus Indianapolis and Cleveland. Key losses, wide receiver Robbie Anderson, tackle Brandon Shell, guard Tom Compton, and cornerback Daryl Roberts. Throw in there Demaryius Thomas as well, but I didn't think he played that many games for wide receiver last year. Key additions, tackle George Fant, center Connor McGovern, guard Greg Van Roten, wide receiver Brashard Perryman, and cornerback Pierre Desir. All right. Whom they drafted, tackle Mekhi Becton, wide receiver Denzel Mims, safety Ashton Davis, edge rusher Jabari Zuniga. So the Jets, it looks like they care finally about protecting their quarterback. All right. Finally. Sam Darnold should be happy. They worked a ton on their offensive line, and I like that when teams do that. They absolutely went nuts. And they drafted the most athletic tackle in Mekhi Becton. I also think, if you remember from our pre-draft shows, that they got the best wide receiver in the draft, which was Denzel Mims. My opinion. So I did have to punish them a half game for an easy schedule and an easy Bills game at the end. All right. They had a very easy time against a Bills second string and third string at the end. So remember, I factored that in. But as far as what Adam Gase has to be thinking, the head coach of this team, do or die. This is his third year now with the New York Jets. They haven't done diddly squat. Him and Sam Darnold need to get together and get 8 wins this year. Otherwise, they're going to be in some trouble. They should be able to beat the Patriots. This is the team that should be able to push the Bills. In saying all that, my calculation has them at 7.4 wins. Okay. Now, here's how I got to that. The Jets, 6.5 wins last year instead of 7. I took the half game away. 5.6 was their Pythag, so 6.1. I'm going to give them a half game back because they were very injured last year. You remember their wide receivers were decimated. They had a medium schedule last year, not doing anything with the actual schedule. It was somewhat easy, I mentioned earlier, but not quite enough. Hard this year, so I'm going to take away a game. You're down to 5.1. Key losses, they didn't lose too much, take away a half game, but I really love who they drafted, and I loved who they worked on their offensive line, so I gave them 2 games and a quarterback for all they did. 2.25. That got me to 7.4 wins. Now, with that, being that the win total's at 7, I'm going to lean to the over on this one. Don't have a ton of confidence yet in Adam Gase after what I saw, what he did with Ryan Tannehill in Miami, and after what Ryan Tannehill did with the Tennessee Titans last year. Last, but maybe not least anymore, is the Miami Dolphins. Vegas win total 6.5 at large games versus Jacksonville and Cincinnati. How perfect is that? Key losses. Absolutely nobody. Nobody. Key additions. Byron Jones, cornerback. Outside linebacker Kyle Van Noy. Defensive end Shaq Lawson. Eric Flowers. Guard Eric Flowers, I should say. Defensive end Emmanuel Ogba. Running back Jordan Howard from the Eagles, who used to be on the Bears. And center Ted Karras. I think this team's trying to win. Who did they draft? Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. And he's going to replace Ryan Fitzmagic at some point. But I think you have to let Fitzmagic fail at first. You know, when he starts, he's a lot worse for some reason when he's penciled in as the starter of the team rather than a backup quarterback. Hopefully he'll get his head through that. Harvard education like his, you'd think that he'd work through it by now. Tackle Austin Jackson. Cornerback Noah Igbinoghene. Probably said that wrong. And a bunch of other players. The Dolphins this year pretty much busted out their pocketbook and spent a ton of money. They didn't really lose anybody. You know, that makes a difference in free agency and how I had to do the calculation. I was high on a high note how they finished the season, beating the Patriots in Foxborough. The thing that I really have to look at here is their Pythagorean wins was only 3.6 and they hit 5 last year. They overachieved by a lot. You know, that sucked for all of us that took under 5 for the Miami Dolphins last year because it was like one of the surest plays. Sucker like closed at like 3 or something, 3.5 maybe. Maybe it was 4, but either way, we bet that early and ended up pushing. But Ryan Fitzpatrick does amazing things as a backup quarterback. And like I said early, it kind of depends upon how he's going to play and when or if Tua is going to come in. The good news is that their division should be a lot more winnable this year for them. And the Dolphins covered pretty much every position in the offseason in free agency except for one position that I did not like that they missed was wide receiver. Allen Hurns, Devontae Parker. I'm not seeing it. Okay. So Fitzmagic might have to struggle a little bit due to them not covering tight end and wide receiver that much. But I think this defense is going to be better. I think their offensive line is going to be better. And I definitely think their running game is going to be better. In saying all that, I don't have a play because the Buffalo Bills are pretty good. Taking 5 games from last year, 3.6 Pythagorean wins, averages to 4.3, 0 for injury and elderly adjustments. Medium schedule last year, medium schedule this year. Their at-large games happen to be really easy, so that's why they don't have a hard schedule. Key losses, nobody. I'm giving them 3 wins back for draft and free agency, but that only brings me to 7.3 wins when their win total is at 6.5. So it's a strong lean to the over for me, but it's not quite there to get to the dance for the Miami Dolphins. So ending it with that, the Dolphins are up and coming. The Patriots, we'll see if Belichick can pull a rabbit out of his hat this year. The Bills will be winning the division plus money. All right, let's move on to a more powerful division, the AFC West. And I say powerful because now there's a new kid in town, and he's better than everybody else, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs came in and kicked ass. The last 2 years, they've been absolutely fantastic. The Chiefs are your Super Bowl champions. And Patrick Mahomes really showed why he's the most valuable player, in my opinion. I know Lamar Jackson is right up there too, but I believe that Mahomes does a little bit more, improvisation out there when the Ravens are built a little bit more towards Harbaugh's power running system. So now, as I say that, there's not that much of a difference. I'm trying to start a controversy, but right now, to me, Patrick Mahomes is the man. So this division, 2 teams are getting better, and it's the Broncos for sure and the Raiders. Okay? My biggest 3 questions, this whole division, sums it all up from what we know. Denver, is Drew Lock a franchise quarterback? Well, this year, we're going to find that out if he doesn't get injured. Kansas City, are they going to show any signs of a Super Bowl hangover? Because that's a real thing. A Super Bowl hangover is a real thing. And the last question is, do the Raiders make a step forward to the playoffs with Gruden and Carr at quarterback? Let's move into the first team we're going to discuss is the Kansas City Chiefs. Vegas win total is 11.5, juiced to the over, minus 145. So it's really about 11.85, right? Key losses: cornerback Kendall Fuller, defensive end Emmanuel Ogbah, guard Stefan Wisniewski, tackle Cameron Irving, inside linebacker Reggie Ragland, outside linebacker Terrell Suggs, running back LaShawn McCoy. Now, McCoy, as you know, played like 1 snap in the playoffs, so I just had to throw him out there because he was backup, but he's not going to affect it as much as the other guys. Suggs was kind of a rental as well. Key additions: the only thing that really brought that was key was right tackle and Mike Remmers, in my opinion. And who they drafted was running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, linebacker Willie Gay, offensive tackle Lucas Niange. So, you know that there'd be players leaving this team. You knew it, right? After an amazing Super Bowl, players go get paid. The teams try to keep their core guys as much as possible, but they can't keep everyone. They're going to eventually have to pay Mahomes, right? I mean, but just with Mahomes there, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, those guys are kind of the creation of a dynasty. But in saying that, I feel like this team was sleeping when it came to their draft. They were kind of sleeping, I thought they could have got a great edge rusher at the 32nd position there. I think Gross Matos was there. Espinosa was there, So I scratched my head a little bit about that when there was only 1 or 2 off the board. I mean, remember edge rusher just a couple years back after Von Miller's Super Bowl was like going like flies, just dropping like flies off the draft board. There was probably like 4 or 5 edge rushers drafted in the first round themselves. Well, this year they could have capitalized better rather than getting Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire ran a 4.640. I mean, he's 205 pounds, and I think he's kind of the product of an amazing system. Don't get me wrong. He was still my top 5. I think I am 5th as a running back coming out, but at the same time, they could have done better. Swift was out there, Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, come on. But let's look at the schedule here. They're going to have a medium hard schedule, at-large games versus Baltimore and Houston. As I said, Baltimore is going to be tough again. You know it. Houston should be good. I mean, they did screw up a lot of things getting rid of their best receiver, but still got Watson there. So I don't like the fact that their schedule, they have to go to Baltimore, to Buffalo, and to New Orleans. All right? That's 3 tricky ones right there. All away games. I expect them to drop 1 home game. All right? It's probably to possibly an at-large game. I don't know. I expect them to drop one of them. Maybe it's going to be Houston. Not sure. But that's expected. So that's 4 losses there, and their win total is 11.5. And if you look at their division games on the road, at Denver, at the Raiders, at San Diego, LA Chargers, they could very well lose one of those 2 and just get 11 wins. All right. So my number is 10.3. I never go over 11.5. I mean, I will never bet a team total over 11.5. They had 12 wins last year. Their Pythag was 11.6. All right? Average that out, it's 11.8. Not taking away anything or giving them back for injuries. They were injured for a little while this year. Mahomes missed 3 games. I mean, I almost gave them a half game back, but I think they went 2-1 when Mahomes was out, if I remember correctly. So I have to double check that, but I almost gave them a half game back for that. But either way, it wouldn't have been enough. Medium schedule last year, 0. Medium hard this year, take away a half game. Key losses, a lot, really. I only took away a game and a quarter for their key losses, and I'm only giving them back a quarter for pretty much who they drafted and that one player they signed. So that gets me at 10.3 wins. So even if I gave them a game back for Mahomes being injured a few games last year, that would get me only to 11.3. So it's at 10.3 is what I have them. So I have a strong lean to the under, but I'm certainly not going to bet against Patty Mahomes. Next, we have the Denver Broncos. Vegas win total, 7.5. Juice to the over, minus 130. All right. 7.7 is kind of where it's at. So I really like what Vic Fangio put together last year as a first-year head coach there. They did better than I thought they would. They really did. They got 7 wins. I was a little bit surprised. I don't think I played it, but I was surprised they got up to 7. He's a good coach. He was a great defensive coordinator for the Bears and for the Niners before that, and he's kind of proven himself over and over, and now they're kind of just get him some good dudes over there. So, hard schedule, right? They have at-large games versus the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans. It's pretty hard because, of course, their conferences they're playing are very hard as well. Key losses. Center, Connor McGovern. Cornerback, Chris Harris. Not too bad, really. Key additions, running back Melvin Gordon. Tight end Nick Vanette. Defensive tackle Christian Covington. Safety Will Parks. Got some guys there whom they drafted. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Wide receiver KJ Hamler from Penn State. Speedy guy. Cornerback Michael Ojemudia. And center Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU. This team didn't lose much in free agency. And I thought they definitely gained a few guys that I like. Love Melvin Gordon. The thing that's rare for me is I actually like their draft a ton when they went wide receiver first. Normally, as you've heard before, I am not a big fan of drafting a wide receiver in the first round unless it's a clear-cut Julio Jones type. But I just like the fact that they got an underrated guy, KJ Hamler, in the second, and they got a center who I thought was possibly the best center in this draft, LSU's Lloyd Cushenberry. The fact that they stole him in the first round makes me kind of high on what Denver did in the draft here. You know, and Melvin Gordon's a hard worker. Know him because as a Badger fan, he played with the Badgers for all these years. He was fantastic. I saw him when he ran 426 yards in the first 3 quarters and sat the whole fourth quarter against Nebraska. He was amazing. But the thing about this team is what I said earlier. Let's face it, what's Drew Lock? You know, what is Drew Lock going to be? Is he going to be that franchise quarterback that we all thought he could be when he was still in college? His draft stack tanked after his last year at Missouri, if you remember, right? But at the same time, he's got a super strong arm, and if he could lead this team, I think 7 or 8 wins is definitely more than possible, with the upside of 9 is fair. So my number is 7.5. And it's not going to be a play for me, but 7 wins from last year. Pythag was 6.9. Not going to take away or give them anything for injury and age. Medium schedule last year. They will have a hard schedule this year. Take away a game for that. Not taking them anything away for the key losses. Giving them a game and a half for a great draft and a good free agency brings me to 7.5. I feel like I might have shorted them a little bit. I think maybe I should have gave them 2 games for draft and free agency. But at the same time, it's all about Drew Lock for me anyway. So I'm not going to make a play on this. If he sucks or doesn't play nearly as well as he finished the last 2 games last year, then they can be in trouble. But you have to remember the last 2 games was against the Lions and like the Bengals or something really easy. So in my opinion, I would have a slight lean to the over for the Denver Broncos. Next, and maybe not least, is the Las Vegas Raiders. What's funny about the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Denver Broncos is that all their win totals are around 7.5 to 8, really. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs way at 11.5. So second place is kind of a crapshoot according to Vegas, but I would personally take the Chargers completely out of that, and you'll see why when I get to them. But the Raiders, 7.5 win total, juice to the over, minus 125, so 7.65. Their schedule is hard, once again. At-large games against Cleveland, who should be better, and the Colts, who are looking to definitely be better and are forecasted by many to win the division. Key losses, outside linebacker Vontaze Burfict. He only played a few games, so defensive end Benson Mayowa, cornerback Darryl Worley, linebacker Tahir Whitehead, strong safety Carl Joseph. Key additions: cornerback Prince Amukamara, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, inside linebacker Corey Littleton, defensive end Carl Nassib, inside linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski, quarterback Marcus Mariota, strong safety Jeff Heath, defensive tackle Malik Collins, tight end Jason Witten, free safety Demarius Randall. List goes on. You know, Witten's a little bit of a head scratcher because they already had Fant and a few other guys from before. But either way, Witten's a leader. Whom they drafted, wide receiver Henry Ruggs, cornerback Damon Arnett from Ohio State, and a bunch of other head scratchers. So Chucky is moving to Vegas, and their stadium looks pretty freaking awesome. It's actually almost done. Metallic, black, silver. It's absolutely beautiful. I might be going to the first game that they have, and I think they have a game, a UNLV game that might happen a week before that or 2, and I might want to check that out. But either way, I love the aggressiveness and free agency that they showed here. I just didn't like their draft, if you remember. I thought Henry Ruggs is a number 2 wide receiver, and I'm not sure what he's going to do with the safety over the top. I mean, he's pretty light. He can really get jacked and hurt. if he's going to be playing the number one receiver and have that safety over him. I don't think Hunter Renfrow is a number one guy either. He was a great pass catcher last year out of the slot. And Nelson Aguilar is definitely not a number one guy. So I feel like this team, ever since they lost Amari Cooper, don't have a number one receiver that you can count on there. Derek Carr showed me that he's capable, and he can play well enough at times to win games, as long as their defense can get through. So he's a quarterback with a good team around him, can be very good. What I love is, like I said, free agency focused a ton on their defense. And I'll tell you this, it's going to be a shame if they can't perform in the new stadium in front of fans. But at the same time, lots of fans would be going to Las Vegas for their vacation to see them play the Raiders, an excuse to go to Vegas. So you always wonder what their true home field advantage would have been. So looking at their season win total, I'll break it down for you. But the biggest problem really is that they have the fourth hardest schedule this year against Vegas season win totals, and pretty tough at large games versus Cleveland and Indianapolis. It's funny that, they play Cleveland and Indianapolis when you have the Denver Broncos playing Pittsburgh and Tennessee. I personally would rather be playing Pittsburgh and Tennessee than Cleveland and Indianapolis this year. So let's take a look at what we have. Raiders, 7 wins last year, 5.2 Pythag, averages at 6.1, 0 adjustment for injuries. They had a medium hard schedule, so I'll give them a half game back. They have a very hard schedule this year, so I'll take away a game. Only take away a half game for free agency, but give them back 2 games for what they did in free agency. And the draft brings me to 7.1 wins. So, unfortunately, in this division against Kansas City and their tough conference schedule, I have to give them only 7.1 wins. That's a lean to the under. All right, last and certainly least, we have the Los Angeles Chargers with their Vegas win total at 8. Schedule's actually easy, though. And it's because the teams that they get to play with their at-large is Jacksonville and Cincinnati. How nice is that? It made it just such a difference from third place in the division that the Las Vegas Raiders got to fourth place with the Los Angeles Chargers. The problem is the players that they lost. Key additions: Brian Bulaga from the Packers, kind of getting old, offensive tackle. Defensive tackle Linval Joseph, cornerback Chris Harris, outside linebacker Nick Vigil. Key losses, obviously, quarterback Phillip Rivers, running back Melvin Gordon, fullback Derek Watt went to join his brother at the Steelers. One of his brothers, because as you know, all 3 Watts play in the NFL, JJ, TJ, and Derek. Free safety Adrian Phillips, and linebacker Thomas Davis. Man, why couldn't they have been a Watt? Jeez. Anyway, whom they drafted: quarterback Justin Herbert for the 6th pick of the draft, linebacker Kenneth Murray, wide receiver KJ Hill. Losing Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon is the elephant in the room here, to me. All right. I do like some of the additions, as I mentioned: Linval Joseph, Chris Harris, Nick Vigil. But in saying that, I do not understand this win total at 8 at all. Playing in this tough division, you have Tyrod Taylor there. He's at the helm, but he's not going to get those reps, those first QB reps that is needed because of this pandemic. It's the only team in this division that doesn't have consistency at starting quarterback. I mean, losing Phillip Rivers there, it's almost monumental. He's been there, 15 years? Super long time. All right, that's a major transition here. And the only saving grace is their at-large schedule, I suppose, against Jacksonville and Cincinnati. And I did like the fact that their Pythagorean win total last year was 7.8 over the 5 wins they actually had. But in saying that, the large downgrade from Rivers to Taylor is what this is all about. I think it's a 4-point downgrade in power ratings for the quarterback and possibly about 2 wins. All right. I have the Chargers at 5.4 wins. Here's how I got there. 5 wins last year, 7.8 Pythag, averages a 6.4. No adjustment for injury or age. Medium easy schedule, minus 0.5. Easy schedule this year. Going to give them a game back for that, for 2020. The 2019, medium easy, so I took away a half game. Minus 2.5 games for key losses. 2 games for Rivers. A half game for Melvin Gordon and the rest. Draft and free agency, I'm going to give them a game back for that. I do like some of those guys they picked up. Obviously, their Vegas win total is 8. That only brings me to 5.4 wins. I don't know how the hell this team can get to 8 wins this year. I just don't know it. I mean, Anthony Lynn hasn't proven too much to me yet. If he gets to 8 or 9 wins with this team with a new quarterback like Tyrod Taylor, if you remember, this team fired Ken Wisenhunt last year and went with interim coach, interim offensive coordinator. They stuck with Shane this year as well. So they kind of have to revamp a lot of things. And with how hard the NFC South is that they're playing, a couple teams are pretty good and up and coming in the AFC East. And obviously the Patriots, if they can do better than what I project, would be tough on the Chargers. I really think that they have absolutely no chance of getting 8 wins. This might be my strongest underplay of any season win total in the NFL. From 8 wins down to 5.4 is a 2.6 game discrepancy. Take the Chargers under 8 wins.
Why didn't you just kill me?
You don't fear death. You welcome it. Your punishment must be more severe.
Torture.
Yes. But not of your body. Of your soul.
Where am I?
Home. Where I learned the truth about despair. As will you. There's a reason why this prison is the worst hell on earth. Hope. Every man who was rotted here over the centuries has looked up to the light and imagined climbing to freedom. So easy. So simple. And like shipwrecked men turning to seawater from uncontrollable thirst. Many have died trying. And learned here that there can be no true despair without hope. So, as I terrorize Gotham, I will feed its people hope to poison their souls. I will let them believe that they can survive so that you can watch them clambering over each other to stay in the sun. You could watch me torture an entire city. And then when you truly understood the depth of your failure, we will fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny. We will destroy Gotham. And then, when it is done, and Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much for listening to the Odds Breakers podcast. If you have any questions about anything NFL, season win totals, or anything, feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Have a great weekend. Enjoy whatever sports you're able to watch, and go get some